anyway, so 大抵よく、時々、ちょっと、あまり、全然 in that order, from most frequent to least frequent. Okay? So, doing time phrases, asking what time people do certain things. Are we ready to try these? Okay. Jamie-san, why don't you start this time for us? Ask Shiara-san the example.
Okay. Should I do the one before the slash? Like when I was doing it, I was confused. Does it matter which one? Because that one says every
either one.
which day. Like, what did you do today?
Oh, no.
Are we talking about this one?
Yeah, 何時に起きますか or 何時頃起きますか? What's the difference in meaning between those? 何時に起きますか or 何時頃起きますか?
About one's specific and one's like at about.
Right, yeah, so 何時に起きますか is what time do you wake up. 何時頃起きますか is about what time do you wake up. Okay, so you can choose either one. どうぞ.
Okay. 何時に起きますか?
起きますか?
8時頃起きます。
はい. Notice that the answer does not have to be the same form.
That was
As
my
the
question
question.
until you answered. I was like, oh yeah, you can
Yeah.
answer either.
Yeah. So 何時頃 or 何時に起きますか ?8 時頃起きます。いいですね。じゃあ、シエラさんとコーリさん、next one.
Okay. 何時にget up, right? Oh wait, no, that one's to get up, so eat breakfast.
はい。
朝ごはん食べます。
Okay, what do you mean? 朝ごはん
を食べます。
か
Dang it. I was like trying to I was like, okay, like that's
Yeah.
thinking about the verb and yeah, it's a
Yeah,
question.
okay, so 何時に朝ごはんを食べますか
90. Wait. 8.
You can choose whatever time you want to say.
9時ごる起きます。
Well, 起きます is wake up, but she asked you
あ
何時に朝ごはんを食べますか
9時ご食べます。
Okay.
Wait, I forgot the part between the object.
Okay, so this is what you were trying to say?
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, the pronunciation for 9 o'clock is special. Kuji, yes. Kuji. Kuji goro. Asa gohan o tabemasu. Okay? Does anyone see anything here that could be dropped if you wanted to? The asa gohan o, that whole piece, could be left out because it was already part of the question. So we assume that if you just say kuji goro tabemasu, I eat around 9, we assume you're still talking about breakfast because that was what the question was, right? Just like in English, you can say, hey, what time do you have breakfast? And you can say 9 o'clock, right? You don't have to say, I eat breakfast at 9 o'clock, right? You can leave out the parts that are understood by both parties, right? And just answer. So in Japanese, the essential parts of the answer, in this case, are gonna be the time phrase, because that was the question, right, nanji? And the verb, because you just always need the verb in Japanese, pretty much. Make sense? So, kujigoro tarimasu works also. Hi.
So if you say goro, you don't have to use ni?
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So, いいですか? Tori-san?
With that, you don't
Hi.
need to put the O either, or like
The O
uchi.
is mandatory if there's an object, but if you're dropping the object, you have to drop the object particle too.
Okay.
Yeah, these two go together as a set, and to leave the O dangling along in there without an object for it to attach to doesn't work. Okay, it doesn't make any sense that way. If you left the O in there without the asagohan, it sounds like you're eating the 9 o'clock, which doesn't make any sense at all. You know, we're getting into science fiction territory again. Okay, so you're gonna ask about what time Julianne goes to school.
何時ごろ
Goro,
頃学校で or home?
neither.
Okay, 学校
Destination verb, so
います
gakko,
学校
gakko.
行きます
Okay, what goes between the gakko and the ikimasu?
で
No,
oh,
destination verb.
に
Ni, that's the one. Gakko ni ikimasu. Okay? Gotta be careful. Okay, so nanji ni or nanji goro gakko ni ikimasu ka? Okay, one more time, ask.
何時ごろ
学校
学校に行きますか
はい。
7時半に行きます。
はい、7時半に行きます。いいですね。はい、じゃあ次。
何時に昼ご飯 Okay, I went.
You're good so far. 何時に昼ご飯
昼ご飯食べます。
昼ご飯
を食べます。
か。
12時半に食べます。
はい、いいですね。じゃあどうぞ。
何時にうちに帰りますか？
はい。
7時にうちを帰ります
Not all. うち destination.
に帰り
うちに
うちに
帰りま
Can I
す。
start over?
はい。
7時に
はい。
うちに帰ります
はい。
帰ります
帰ります。はい。7時にうちに帰ります。Yes, it is possible to have two ne's serving two entirely different functions in the same sentence. はい。
Could you replace the second knee with particle A?
You could, yes.
So,
So if having ni is confusing for you, you could say 7時にうちへ帰ります. And that's perfectly good too.
Did I use the right home for that?
Yeah, uchi is fine,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Is ie?
Ia would work also, but in this case, to me, uchi sounds more natural, so that's
Okay.
fine. But yeah, those two are somewhat interchangeable. There are certain places where one's gonna sound more natural than the other, but,
Like if
no,
you're telling someone to go home, you wouldn't use uchi, right?
it depends. It's hard to pin them down, so don't worry about it for now, okay? Just, for now, just don't worry about it.
Okay, so,
Sort of
sorry.
it.
Yeah,
Sleep, go to bed, who remembers what it means?
oh, I got it. So, Nanjini o.
Why are you putting an O in there?
Making a mistake.
Okay.
Nanjini. Nanjini nerimasu.
Is it
Ka-
an U verb or a do verb? Look again. They're listed by category. Which category is it?
It's really, so I was trying to do it without looking at those.
Nani?
Nanjini,
What's the rule for do verbs? Drop the ru and add mas.
oh, that's it.
That's it. You're making it harder than it needs to be.
I was trying to swap it out, but that's the wrong thing to do. Okay, so Nanjini, nemasu.
Question mark for
Ka?
ka.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
it?
that's it. Nanjini demasu ka?
Okay, sorry.
That's
Sorry,
okay.
that took so long.
Nah.
So, do you want me to just respond, or?
Okay, go ahead and say it one more
Okay,
time.
Nanjini, nemasu ka?
Juichiji ni nemasu.
Hi, any questions about how those work? Okay, so I know that sometimes you're still drawing blanks on grammar or particles or conjugations, but do you have the concepts?
Yes.
Hi.
Could you do the go home one again? I was confused about
Okay, the question, the answer, or both?
the question.
Okay. Nanji ni, uchi ni or e kaerimasu ka? Okay, so you can use ni again, or you can use the one that looks like het, but it gets pronounced et because it's being used as a particle.
Okay, and you
Okay.
did that one for the school one too, right?
Yes, so
Okay.
gakko ni ikimasu, you could replace that with gakko e ikimasu. Okay, you can use, these two are interchangeable as long as your destination is a physical location.
And we're only supposed to use karimasu for, kai.
Kaerimasu is always for uchi. Uchi e
So you typically
kaerimasu.
But
Okay?
it has to be somewhere that we belong to.
Right, kaerimasu always goes with
Is that
something like
destination?
uchi or your home country or someplace else where you belong, where you live. Okay?
If you have like, say someone has worked at a place for an extremely long time, would that qualify?
No, not if it's just their workplace, not their home.
If,
You
okay.
need to stop doing that.
If they own a
Confuse
business,
me
does
with
that
your
count?
English.
Not unless their home is in the same building.
Okay.
So, you know, and there are still homes in Japan, in the countryside especially, there are places where, you know, they've got a little two-story building and the shop is down here and the family's apartment is up here.
Yeah.
But even then, it would depend on where they're coming from, you know. Kaerimasu could mean, you know, I've been working down here in the store all day and now I'm going upstairs,
Right.
right? if you're over here in town somewhere, kairimasu could mean going back to that building. But if you're going back to the building in order to work, you might not you might or might not use kairimasu. You
So
might.
it's basically always narrowing down where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, so if you're over here in some other part of the village, then going back to the building that includes both your business and your home, kairimasu could work as that verb. If you're downstairs where the business is, and you're ready to go upstairs to the part where the living space is, that could also be kairimasu. Okay? But if you don't live and work in the same building, then kairimasu only applies to your actual home, not to a business, no matter how much of it you own, no matter how long you've owned it. Does that make sense? You know, we sometimes use, oh, he lives at work as like an idiom to express that somebody just does a lot of work. The word kairimasu in Japanese does not convey that concept of that sort of sarcastic use of he lives at that company. It doesn't work that way. The Japanese people would take you very literally if you said it that way. They would think, oh, he's got a bed in his office and he sleeps there because his wife kicked him out. You know, it would be taken literally, not figuratively, if you said it that way.
Right.
And people would be confused. I saw another hand. Was there another question?
Is there any circumstances where you can't use a instead of me in a sentence?
If the place that you're referencing isn't really a place, but more of an event that you're going to, then you wouldn't use at there, only me. So like if you're talking about going to a concert, you would use ni. But if you're talking about going to the King Center, you would use either one.
So like if you were to say going to the movie, you would use me because you're not saying the specific movie.
Right,
Okay.
yeah, if you're talking about going to the movie theater,
Okay.
then it would be at or ni.
So
But
is
if you're saying that you're going to, I don't know, Mission to Mars or whatever movie you're going to go see, the name of the movie is an event.
Okay.
But if you're saying I'm going to the Oaks Theater, that's a location. You see the difference?
But, I mean,
But
It's like
me
you were
works
saying,
for
like-
both.
but like time and stuff can be replaced with eh.
Right, no. It is specifically traveling to a destination, okay? And de, by contrast, is a location word, but it's a place at which you're doing some action. It's not traveling to a place, it's I'm already in the place and now I'm gonna do this verb. Usually with an object involved as well, so things like restaurant de sushi o tabemasu. At the restaurant, I will eat sushi. And it's possible to leave this part out. Restaurant de tabemasu. Eat at the restaurant, right?
So
But this de is definitely doing an action at a place. It's not the traveling to or from.
that, and if you were traveling, you would use either me or eh.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so, I'm going to the restaurant and I'm going to eat at the restaurant are two separate sentences for now. Okay, so restaurant ni ikimasu, I go to a restaurant. Restaurant de tabemasu, I eat at a restaurant. That's the particle difference, ni and de. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so you can go to the library, you can go to the post office. Once you get there, you can read a book or look at a magazine or something, right? But you don't read the magazine while traveling to the post office, right? You read the magazine once you've gotten there. Make sense? Those more complex sentences where you're trying to combine two or more things happening into one sentence, those come later. Think like second semester later. Okay? So, any questions about how to ask and answer what time you do things. Everybody feeling okay about those? Okay, Brandon-san, I'm gonna get you to read the example lower down the same page that corresponds to part 1B. We're adding the 2 o'clock into doing the action. So it was reading a magazine at the library at 2 o'clock. Remember when we did those? Okay, so we're backtracking to get that.
What page is that?
95 is where the original exercise was. 98 is where the example sentence is given. But we're using that sentence format of adding in the time to reword that old exercise that we did before twice already. Remember? We did it once with just the object and the verb. We did it again with the location, the object and the verb. And now we're doing it with the time, the location, the object and the verb. Okay, so we're up to this structure now where the person is optional. You don't have to say Mary-san wa every single time because it's the same person every time. But you're going to do the time, ni, place, de, object, o, verb. Okay, so Rando-san's going to read the first one for us.
2時に図書館で雑誌を読みます。
はい。Okay, now looking at page 95 some more. 95ページですね。ベサニーさん、1番お願いします。At 4:30 at home.
4時半時。
4時半に. The G only
Did I say
occurs
that?
once. You said 4時半時.
I thought I said 4時半に.
Okay, it sounded like G, sorry.
Oh, I don't know. I meant to say D at least.
Yeah.
Okay. 4時半にうちで音楽
はい。
音楽を聴きます。
はい。いいですね。4時半にお家で音楽を聴きます。Does everybody see how that fits together? はい。じゃあ、おじさん、2番お願いします。
日曜日に学校でテニスをします。
はい. Notice that in this case, instead of a clock time, we've got a day, and it still works, right? You know, it's just a different kind of time phrase. And we've got some time phrases coming up that aren't going to take ni also,
Oh,
so
that was the wrong
watch
one.
out for that. Okay, so 土曜日に学校でテニスをします。はい、じゃあ、ポールさん、3番。
5時にマクドナル
Okay, I'm going to spell this one out for you. There are two. Makudo is the short form, and makudonarudo is the long form.
マクド5時にマクドで
はい、
ハンバー
ハンバーガ
ガーを食べます。
ー。はい、いいですね。じゃあ、リエミさん、4番お願いします。
3時に喫茶店でコーヒーを飲みます。
はい。じゃあ、シアラさん、5番お願いします。
今晩に
Does konban take a ni?
No.
No. Do you know why?
No. Because
Konban means this night, tonight. So if you say it now, you mean Thursday night, right? If you say it tomorrow,
Alright, so it's very specific and it's the day that you say it at.
it's what they call relative time.
Uh-huh.
It changes depending on when you say it, right? If I say konban tomorrow, it'll mean Friday night. If I say konban on Saturday, it'll mean Saturday night, right?
Yes.
So that's what they call relative time. So that one is one of the categories that doesn't take ni. Okay, relative time does not take ni. Remember what else we discovered does not take ni? there's a very important question word.
Today?
Kyo, yeah, today would be another example of relative time.
It's
Itsu, the question word itsu does not take ni. And there's another category besides relative time words like kyo and honban and itsu. That's still relative time. That's another example of relative
Events
time.
don't take me.
What's that?
Events.
That's a different issue. We're talking about, the events would take, but that's destination.
Oh, right, has to.
Yeah, we're,
Frequency adverbs?
frequency adverbs are the other category, yes. Okay, so things like mainichi, yoku, taitei, what else? Tokidoki, chotto, amari, zenzen. None of those take ni.
And in that case, you don't put anything?
Right, you just put nothing on.
Okay.
The phrase all by itself is all you need for those kind. Okay? So, honban,
本番うちでテレビを見ます。
はい、そうですね。本番、うちでテレビを見ます。いいですか？じゃあ、コリさん、6番。
毎日に
What is it again?
毎日
Yeah, and that, is that a specific time or frequency adverb?
frequency. I
Yeah.
forgot the particle for that. No
It
particle.
doesn't take one.
Okay.
Yeah. So, 毎日、
毎日大学で日本語を勉強します。
Okay, that's one way to do it. 毎日大学で日本語を勉強します. She studies Japanese every day. But in the picture, they're actually talking to one another.
Okay.
So I think they meant that she speaks Japanese
Okay.
at college every day.
話します。
話
話します。
はい、話します。はい、日本語を話します。いいですか? Okay. Questions about those? Okay. If you flip the page, the next segment is the same thing. We did these destination sentences before. Now we're adding in the time at which she's going to go to these different places. Make sense? Okay, so Julian-san, can you do the example one? She's going to the post office at 1 o'clock.
1時に郵便局に行きます。
はい、そうですね。じゃあ、シャンタオさん、1番お願いします。
3時に
図書館。
館
はい、図書館。
で
No、図書館
に
に、
行きます。
はい、there you go. 3時に図書館に行きます。If you want to, you could also do 3時に図書館へ行きます。But de does not work here because she's not, yeah, it's a movement to the library, not, she's already at the library doing something. Okay. Yeah. Hi.
I'm totally lost.
Okay.
Where are we?
96ページ.
But what are we doing?
We're
I'm
adding
sorry.
the time phrases to those. Remember, we did the sentences
Oh, okay, so
before
I'm just
without the
adding the
time.
8:30 to the going to school.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay. So yeah, she's coming to school at 8:30 as opposed to just she's coming to school.
okay. I think I
Okay.
didn't know that. My brain's not working for some reason.
Okay. What's the 8:30 part gonna be?
8時半
8時半.
or
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah. So 8時半 particle is gonna be,
Is it day?
no, what's the time particle?
Ni?
That's right. So 8時半に
8時半に、go,
学校
oh, sorry. 8時に、
8時半に
8時半に、学校に、
coming to, so
it's not ikimasu, it is,
Right.
So, 8時半に学に、帰ります
来ます。
来ます
Yeah,
It wouldn't be 帰ります because you don't belong there.
right, yeah,
So-
she doesn't live at school.
Right, so, 8時半に学に来ます。
来ます. There you go.
Whoop. Alright, sorry.
Alright, you did it. Alright, okay, Brandon さん、3番お願いします。
メアリーさんは日曜日に喫茶店に来ます。
はい。じゃあ4番、じゃすみさん。
5時半に家へ帰ります。
はい、そうですね。じゃあ5番、サントリーさん。
明日アメリカへ帰ります。
はい、そうですね。明日、アメリカへ帰ります。Notice that it does not take a particle for 明日 or, what was the other one? Never mind. It was the previous exercise. Okay, 質問がありますか? Any questions about those? Okay. So, just need more practice, right? So,
It didn't help that I was looking on the wrong page.
Yeah.
So I was looking at page 98 and I was like, what the hell are we doing?
Yeah, yeah, 90 wasn't gonna help you much. Okay, コーヒーを飲みませんか? Let's look at this next exercise, Roman numeral 3A. So first of all, who remembers what the conjugation, the basic form, nomimasen means?
Negative.
Negative, right, okay. Now, can anyone guess, what does it mean when you turn it into a negative question? Nomimasen ka?
Here it's more of a suggestion than it is,
Yeah, it's like a suggestion or an invitation. Think about, like, if you're being really polite, won't you have some? Right? That's a very polite way to invite somebody to have something, right? Won't you eat some cake? Won't you have some tea? Won't you see a movie with me? You know, it sounds almost too formal in English, right? But it's a very polite way to invite somebody to do something in Japanese, partly because it is a negative question, which in Japanese allows you to answer yes to mean no. I know that sounds crazy, right? But seriously, you can say, hai nomimasen, yes I won't. It doesn't happen very often, but it is possible to, if you ask it in the negative, it is possible to say, yes I don't, or yes I won't, in response, which for Japanese people is a good thing because they don't like having to say no to people.
It's like a really polite way of shutting someone down.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, what if someone doesn't ask you that way?
Well, there are other ways to ask and there are other ways to politely decline. But this is like the most formal way to invite somebody. To ask in the negative like this gives people an easy out.
Right.
So if you're being especially polite, you will purposely choose to invite with a negative question so that people will have an easy out if they want it. Because of course, they can also say yes, thank you, if they like your idea, right? So, お茶を飲みませんか? ありがとうございます. That works very well. You know, won't you have some tea? Oh, thank you so much. You know, that's a great way to say yes, thank you, right? You just, ありがとうございます.
So it's like a way of eliminating the awkward, like.
It eliminates the awkward no's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, if
You
you're-
can say thank you if you want to accept, and you can say a variety of polite things that don't include the word yeah to say no thanks. Okay, there are a zillion different ways to politely decline in Japanese.
Is it possible just to reply without the ka?
What's that?
Would it be possible if you say no to just reply without the ka?
Sort of, yeah, like, お茶を飲みませんか? You could actually say, はい、飲みません. Yes, I don't drink it. You know, as in, you know, for example, let's say somebody's offering you something that you're actually allergic to, but they didn't know that. So they're asking you, won't you please eat these cookies? Nope, I'm gluten intolerant, there's no way I'm eating those cookies, right? So you can say, はい、食べません. And then, you know, if you feel like that by itself isn't enough, you know, you can learn phrases to say about, you know, アレルギーがあります or something like that. I have an allergy, you know, so that you can express that you're not turning down their polite offer of tea and cake because you don't like them. You're turning it down because there's something there that you're not allowed to have, you know. Yeah, or you're on a diet, or, yeah, diet としてます, you know, yeah, I'm dieting, or there could be lots of different reasons for you to turn something down, right? But you can do it politely so that you're not offending your host, you're not making it sound like you're not appreciative of their effort. Japanese people in general, as a way of saving face for their guests, will usually just prepare something and serve it. Because if they ask you first, would you like something to eat, would you like something to drink, the Japanese polite response to that is going to be, no, don't go to any trouble for me, even if the person is sitting there starving and parched. You know, they're going to say, no, don't do anything for me as a guest. So the person might politely say, let me get you something. And the guest will politely say, no, nothing for me, really. And then the hostess will go into the kitchen and get whatever it is she already prepared anyway, because she's not listening to the polite protests. And she will serve the tea and cakes or whatever she has ready. And at that point, the Japanese person who didn't want anything, all of a sudden, you know, they're eating and drinking it, you know. You know, and if they really didn't want anything, it's okay to just let it sit there in front of you and not actually do much with it. But it's better than not letting them serve you. So if you really don't like what they're serving and there's something you would like to have, like you really are thirsty, but you just can't tolerate Japanese tea, you really just want plain water or some milk or some soda or some such, you can say, you know, something polite about how you can't drink this because of the caffeine or whatever, and could you please have some juice, you know, or whatever it is. Right.
What would be the best way to politely decline giving out my phone number?
That's a good question. I'll have to think about that one a little bit.
'Cause
Yeah.
that's probably the most awkward thing I can think of right now.
Yeah.
Sorry, you don't waffle.
The best I can think of for now would be one of the very ambiguous kinds of phrases they use for politeness sake, like sumimasen is just like, excuse me, I'm sorry, and then chotto, which is literally a little bit, but you don't have to say like a little bit what, you know, a little bit inconvenient, a little bit rude of you to ask me for that, a little bit whatever you're not saying, but sumimasen, chotto,
Just kind of walk
and
away.
you just kind of let it trail off and change the subject.
It's like, can I have your phone number? A little. Give me
Yeah.
one number, one number.
Yeah, it doesn't work at all in English, but in Japanese, that is a polite way of letting the other person know that you don't want to give out whatever that is without coming right out and saying to their face, I don't want to give you my phone number because I don't like you that much. You know? So, you know, if some Japanese groupies are giving you a hard time and, you know, you really don't want to give out your phone number to a bunch of 10-year-old girls. Yeah. No, there are situations like that where you could end up, you know, being the guest speaker at some child of a friend's elementary school, and then all of a sudden you're swarmed by 50 10-year-olds who all want your autograph on stuff, you know, just because you're the gaijin, the one that they've ever met in their entire lives, you know. And so, yeah, you can end up with some awkward situations. And so, yeah, if you do not want all these little 10-year-olds to know how to call you at 3 a.m. Yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, you can, yeah, things can get interesting. You know, and, yeah. Yeah, so international diplomacy, it's important. Yeah, so, yeah, sumimasen ga chotto is a good sort of safe, generic, sorry but no, that's polite enough that you're not going to offend people. I mean, somebody might get their feelings a little hurt because they really wanted whatever it was that you just asked for, but they're not going to be offended because you said it politely. So, you know.
Do you carry on the conversation after that, or do you walk away?
It depends, I guess, on the circumstances. I mean, if you're mobbed by 10-year-olds, you might not be able to walk away without tripping over someone, so.
Just start screaming, that's what I do.
No, I can picture situations where, I mean, if you go sightseeing in any of the major sightseeing parts of Japan, and you happen to be there at school field trip time, you could quite literally end up surrounded on all sides by middle schoolers whose homework assignment was to go talk to a gaijin and ask them questions in English.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, they will literally have like a questionnaire that their teacher made them come up with of, you know, half a dozen or more English language questions that they've learned how to say in the 7th grade.
They have to know.
At first it sounds
Yeah, and
cute,
then-
and then you
but,
think about it,
yeah.
and that's just extremely creepy when you're just
Yeah.
really trying to say
But they will mob the blonde girl, probably.
Yeah.
Yes!
I think I'll say
And, you know, you'll have your 15 minutes of stardom in Japan with all these kids wanting to ask you, what's your name? How old are you? Are you married? You know?
Yes, I just answered yes to all of them. Like, it's like, how old are you? Yes.
And, you know, that's seriously a real homework assignment that a lot of kids get, because when else are they going to practice their English speaking with a native speaker? Except when they're on vacation, you know, because they have these school field trips where the whole 7th grade from a school goes to Kyoto together or to wherever. She had a question first.
For such a politeness and like not inconveniencing other people fixated society, they sure kind of throw the foreigners that happen to be there under the bus for that particular
Yeah.
assignment.
Somehow or other, politeness rules just don't seem to apply to gaijin the same way that they apply to Japanese people.
I would love that.
Sorry, so,
Oh, wait.
Let me answer Sierra's question first, because she had her hand up.
I've been to a bunch of different countries, been on a bunch, like I've been to Haiti, I've been to,
Few
Ecuador and stuff,
places.
with like children in villages and stuff, and, I was wondering, in Japan, do they have like a body contact thing, like, cause I know a lot of the kids like to touch my hair and
Yeah.
like grab on me and stuff like that.
Yes.
And that freaks me out a little bit, but it's like, I'm okay with it, 'cause like it's children, but
Yeah.
I just personally
The kids in Japan were fascinated by every physical difference between them and me.
Are they like touchy or like do they
They-
respect distance? Or not really?
When they didn't know me very well yet, they did keep a little distance, but the girls that I got to know better, all of a sudden that distance disappeared.
Oh.
There were, I got to be part of a little community theater production. They gave me a very small speaking role, so I wouldn't be overwhelmed. But it was, they do this local kabuki production every year, and they have the costumes and everything, and they get the kids involved. And so there were like half a dozen or more little girls from an elementary school that I had visited a few times, so they knew me a little bit. And they were all probably like in the 8 to 10 range, age-wise. And so they knew me a little from that. Once they realized that I wasn't gonna bite, then all of a sudden they were all over me. And like I was getting my hair put up to be inside the wig for the production.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I was sitting there in the makeup chair getting my hair and makeup done for this production, and they were all wanting to come and help comb my hair out and then keep souvenir hair. So they were literally like plucking hairs out of my head. Oh my gosh. And I had to eventually tell them to stop so I wouldn't be bald. You know?
At least they weren't cutting little pieces off.
Right, but they were, you know, some of them were taking hairs out of the comb that had combed my hair, and then some of them, there weren't enough left, so they were trying to take their trick
Yeah,
from
I don't know
me.
where that puts me back, but that's happened to me before as well, so.
You're like a celebrity.
Yeah, and when they first got to know me, they were asking all the questions like, is that your real hair color? Is your hair really that curly by itself? You know, because to them, this is curly hair. You know, I know. Chantel's like, what? Yeah, and the difference in skin tone, they were, you know, putting their arm against mine and comparing skin color. They were fascinated by the fact that I have more hair on my arms than they do. You know, they were fascinated by every little detail that was different from me to them. So, you know, you're gonna get your blue eyes stared at a lot. You know, the hair color differences, the hair texture differences, the skin tone differences are all fascinating for them. Yeah, so Julianne won't get quite as much pestering on that score because she kind of fits in, but she'll get the opposite end of the spectrum, which is people who assume she's Japanese and wonder why she's not more fluent until she tells them that she's not actually Japanese. You know, so you get one or the other extreme, depending on whether or not you fit in visually. You know.
I mean, I obviously fit in visually, I don't know what you guys.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, and they were fascinated by everything like that, so,
They can always tell I'm just a quarter Japanese. They can
Yeah.
always tell.
yeah.
Every Japanese person I've encountered who's like native, they can tell, they know that it's Japanese, and I'm like, I don't even see it, like,
That's so funny.
it's amazing, and they say you
Yeah.
should be a model in Japan because you're a little bit Japanese.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
That-
oh
that's-
no.
Yeah, their idea of what's beautiful in Japan is very strongly influenced by Western looks, and so, yeah, 1/4 Japanese is considered gorgeous.
Good, that's
Yeah.
great,
Yeah,
awesome.
you're in good shape. Yeah. And also, like, Western looking women are very popular there, and so that's the other thing you kind of do have to look out for is the guys who, yeah, are looking to take advantage. And there are gonna be a lot of Japanese girls who think you guys are super handsome too. So not that you're not even in this country, but by Japanese standards, it's like, wow, movie star looks, because you're different. And so yeah, I mean, they're gonna go crazier for you than for like,
The guy that brushes
you
past
know,
them is
80s
actually
Tom
super
Cruise,
cute.
you know. What's that?
They'll look at you more than that super cute guy you think is walking past you.
Right, yeah, it's, yeah.
What if they walk up to like a white person, but then they don't speak English? How did they take that?
Oh, yeah, like if they meet somebody who's, say, Russian or something, and they don't
Yes,
actually speak
Russian.
English, and they're trying to communicate in English,
Yeah.
that confuses them, because there is a sort of stereotype that they kind of think that every gaijin they see is American.
So
And-
like here, when everyone goes and asks me, "Are you Chinese?" I'm like, "No, I'm Viet." And then
Yeah.
they're like, "What's Viet?" I'm like,
Oh, God. Yeah, how does anybody in this country not know where Vietnam is still? I don't get that.
"We had a war."
I know,
This
yeah.
wasn't very favorable. It had a bad history.
Yeah, but no, seriously, there are a lot of Japanese people who are just as geography impaired as Americans. So yeah, if you're from anywhere other than the U.S., sometimes they're surprised. You know, they'll look at somebody who they think must be from the States, and no, I'm Canadian. What? Or I'm German, huh? You know, and some Japanese people are like that, not all. You know, and you know, I had British friends, for example, who were black, and people were like, "You're not from Africa?" You know?
Yeah.
Oh no, me real cool.
Yeah, so yeah, they do kind of have everybody pigeonholed, and if you don't fit in, they're gonna be asking you some pretty personal questions. You know, if you look biracial or something, they don't know how to pigeonhole you. And they will come right out and ask you questions that Americans would consider rude. But they don't mean to be rude, they're just so curious, and they don't know not to ask, because in Japan, they feel like they know who everybody is. You know, you're either Japanese or you're not, you know, and 99% of the population is pure Japanese. So they're just, you know, there are small ethnic minority groups within Japan of, you know, people who are of Korean heritage but they're born in Japan, Chinese heritage but born in Japan. There are small groups these days of foreigners living in Japan from various countries. But there are a lot of Japanese people, especially in the smaller towns and out in the countryside, who just don't know about all of that yet. You get a very different experience in the big cities than you do in the small villages in the country. You know, when I lived in Tokyo, I had friends from all over the world, and I had lots of Japanese people who were used to that and weren't surprised by it. You know, yeah, they were surprised to see our 6'4" blonde friend walking down the street, but they weren't shocked that there would be somebody from Holland in Tokyo. But you get out into the boonies, and you might be the gaijin for miles, you know. So then, yeah, you do get some weird questions sometimes, and you get people who don't quite understand that their curiosity might come across as prying into your private business, you know.
Could you ever show us like pictures from when you were in Japan sometime, like after class or
Yeah,
before
I might be
class?
able to find an old album or something somewhere and bring it in. Yeah, might be able to find something. A lot of, we did eventually get most of those photos digitized, but I wouldn't know exactly where they all are right now. I would have to like find an empty flash drive to save some too if I were gonna bring those in. But I could probably find one of the old albums that we kept. We didn't keep a lot of the physical albums. We tried to digitize all the photos and consolidate because of space, you know. But, yeah,
Did you have trouble, like, with accents that they had at all? Or like, cause I know that that's like, sometimes like,
yeah.
there's a country accent for.
Well, I got used to the local dialect where I was living, so I got used to understanding that local dialect the longer I lived there. The biggest problem I had communication-wise, honestly, was once I got fluent enough in Japanese that I was communicating well in Japanese, my biggest communication problem was the people who spoke katakana English and wanted to try to talk to me in English, and I couldn't understand their English.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, seriously, I mean, think about if every word out of a person's mouth sounded like they were spelling it in katakana.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
would
Ice
be.
cream.
Yeah, ice cream, yeah. I want to eat ice cream with you.
Yeah.
That's truly how some people's accents sounded, and there were a
English.
couple of, yeah, English.
That's,
Yeah.
love it. That's great.
There were 2 English teachers that spoke that way. They were the 2 English teachers at one of the middle schools where I was teaching. And one of them had been the other one's teacher when he was a kid, and then he grew up and became an English teacher and came back to his hometown to teach. And so the 2 of them were teaching together at the same high school, at the same middle school where this guy had been a student many years earlier. So one of them was probably like in his 30s or 40s. The other one was in his 60s, probably getting close to retirement age. And you could tell where the younger guy got his accent from. He learned it verbatim from the older man.
Birds of a feather butcher the language.
Yeah. And, you know, neither one of them had ever studied abroad, I don't think. And their English was just atrocious. And that's what they were teaching all of their students.
Were they at least like grammatically correct or just the accent?
The grammar was sometimes good, sometimes not so great. But it was hard to get past the pronunciation. And honestly, it was at the point where it was actually truly easier for me to just communicate with them in Japanese. When we tried to communicate in English, I struggled to understand anything they were saying. When we spoke in Japanese, I was fine, 100%. You know, it was just that bad.
How do you politely correct them?
It's hard. And I was, you know, in my early 20s, so I was like 2 decades younger than the older one, than the younger one rather. And the older one was even more my senior. So it was very difficult to tell them, let's speak Japanese. You know, usually I put it on me. Like I would tell them, I'm really trying to improve my Japanese, so can we please speak in Japanese? You know, not saying your English is horrible, please don't make me suffer through it. You know, but I also had one student in my adult class, because they had me teaching like an adult conversation class for the community. And one of the students from that group was also 60-something and had that same kind of accent. And I would try to talk to him in English more so than with the other guys, because I felt like it was my job to talk to him in English because he was signed up for my course. But it was hard to understand what he was saying, and it was hard for me to make myself understood to him because his English was not great. I mean, it's not just the pronunciation, but there were vocabulary he didn't know, there were grammar points he didn't know, where I would just try to say something fairly simple to him, and he would get confused, you know. So it was interesting, but one good thing about living in that small town is there were so few people for me to talk to in English that my Japanese really did improve by leaps and bounds that year. Because I had, I think, one colleague whose English was actually pretty darn good. One out of probably a dozen English teachers that I worked with. Only one of them was what I would call fairly fluent. And the the others, some of them were relieved that I wanted to talk in Japanese all the time because their English was so bad they were ashamed of it. You know? And I had probably 1 or 2 friends who spoke fairly good English, but not so comfortably or fluently that it was easier to talk English. It was actually easier to talk to them in Japanese. My Japanese was good enough that it was better than their English. So we ended up speaking Japanese most of the time, which was great for me. I learned a lot, I practiced a lot. You know, I felt bad for them sometimes. They wanted a chance to speak more English and practice. And, you know, it just didn't happen very often. It was more work to talk to them in English than to just keep talking in Japanese. But, yeah, it was an interesting place to live in the countryside like that.
I have 2 questions.
Hi.
Okay, the first one, we're going to assume politeness is a factor, but what's the difference between
You go to the labor center?
oishi
Oh,
and
not today.
umai?
I'll be Tuesdays usually.
Colloquial.
They're usually like Wednesday.
Yeah, umai
Just wondering.
is
Alright.
more slangy, so it is more casual sounding and a little bit coarser sounding, almost more masculine, but masculine and feminine are definitions that are sort of changing with time. So coarse and refined is probably a better dichotomy to use these days because there are a lot of expressions that used to be considered exclusively masculine, and in the modern era now, women use those expressions, and the whole thing has shifted to the side, sort of, so that expressions that used to be considered so coarse that you couldn't use them in polite company are now sort of day-to-day masculine language, and things that used to be considered very masculine are now sort of day-to-day neutral, and things that used to be considered feminine, some of them have also shifted to neutral, and both men and women can use them, and some of them have shifted to archaic sounding, and very few women beyond a certain generation use them anymore. So like there are some expressions that, you know, if a woman uses it, she dates herself as being of that generation that still uses those very feminine, old-fashioned sounding expressions. And it's almost like hearing somebody use Victorian English today. It's like, wow, where are you from? You know? So there are some expressions that have shifted that far. But yeah, umai is kind of on the coarser side of things. Oishi is more neutral. So anybody can say, wow, oishi, umai sounds more like what you would use with just your close friends. And like, depending on your personality type, like a really girly girl probably would only use it if she was hanging out with just her girlfriends and there were no guys around to hear. And even then she might not use it. A more tomboyish girl might not care if her guy friends heard her use that expression. But, you know, the girls who wear pink frilly stuff all the time probably don't use that word, even though it's considered an okay word to use these days. Does that make sense?
Okay, so the second question. Say you were speaking Japanese with somebody and you could catch yourself trying to like present something and the way you do it, you're not quite sure, it feels funky. How do you ask, like, is that proper Japanese or is that grammatically correct?
There's more than one way to ask that question, but you could say, for example, blank to itte mo ii desu ka? Is it okay for me to say blank?
Okay.
Yeah, that's one way to ask that. Or blank wa tadashi desu ka? Is blank correct? Tadashi means correct. So tadashi desu ka would be, is it correct? The grammar, the word for grammar is bunpo. So bunpo wa tadashi desu ka would be, is the grammar correct? But like I said, there's a lot of different ways to ask that depending on your specifics.
Was it Tadashi with a
Tadashi.
with a different accenting of the syllables, or
Tadashi. Tadashi desu ka? Tadashi desu ka? Tadashi means correctness. So,
okie dokie.
and you can use like kono bunpo, this grammar. Kono bunpo wa tadashi desu ka? Is this grammar correct?
Okay.
Okay, does that help?
Uh-huh.
Cool. So, yeah, we finished everything that the level 1 class in the morning had covered, so that's why I kind of let things go when people kept
Okay.
wanting to ask other questions. I
I
figured,
didn't want to like hijack the class
Yeah.
or anything.
oh,